Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on February 28th, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening, and we have no public hearings, so we're going to move right into committee. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. Just bringing forward an item that Council did discuss in our last committee meeting, and that was to approve the lease agreement between the City of Portage and the Portage Regional Library. If you recall, we are in a position now that we are going to be completing the transition of all city-owned leased building lease agreements to an internal rate of $2 per square foot for not-for-profit organizations, excluding those for recreation or community centers. And so you can see we broke down the last time in terms of how much that base rate is and how we do put excess revenues into reserves that could be allocated or accessed if there's improvements. And you can see in the report where we are accessing 18,000 of this reserve to be expended to update the interior lighting. And so those are examples of where we are charging that $2 a square foot and then reinvesting back into these buildings. And of course, everybody knows that it is a regional library within the city, but it is a library that is funded by the rural municipality of Portage la Prairie as well. It is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the Portage la Prairie approve the lease agreement between the city and the Portage Regional Public Library for a 10-year lease agreement commencing January 1, 2022 and expiring December 31st, 2031.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Knox?
Yeah, I just have a comment that I just want to say well done on this agreement. I know the library was looking for an agreement that really laid out who was responsible for what between the leaser and the leasee, and I think that's really well done, so I'm in support of this.
Okay, good. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And Councillor Buds, that concludes your report.
Yes, I'm sorry, Your Worship. That does conclude my report.
Thank you. And City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report at this point in the agenda.
Thank you. And Community Service Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have one item that, again, we discussed at our committee meeting last meeting, and this is to submit our utility priority projects to the Manitoba Water Services Board, for consideration for their 2023 to 2028 project funding plan. As we discussed, the Manitoba Water Services Board is a provincial agency that assists municipalities with the development of water and wastewater infrastructure through funding programs. Each year, the MWSB accepts applications from municipalities for projects which they then use to establish their capital funding plan for the next 5 years. A secondary purpose is to ensure the Government of Manitoba understands the water and wastewater infrastructure needs throughout the province. For the 2023-2028 plan, the municipalities are to submit their top 10 priority projects as approved by their respective councils by March 31st, 2022 for consideration. Projects funded through MWSB are cost shared at 50%. So the list of our 10 priority projects are there. I did read through them in last committee meeting, and it is the administrative recommendation that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie authorize administration to submit the 10 priority utility projects as indicated in this report to the Manitoba Water Services Board for 2023 to 2028 funding consideration. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that concludes the Waterworks Committee report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from your Public Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. We have a number of items of new business, and the first item is the land sale to the Portage Community Revitalization Corporation, PCRC, for the Affordable Housing Project. And this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. And as you mentioned, the issue here is to approve the sale of land to PCRC for their affordable housing project. Excuse me. So as council is aware, in 2021, the province did provide the city with over $1 million for the purpose of advancing affordable housing projects in our community. And the funding was targeted into three main areas: first-time homebuyer assistance, a housing market study, and a construction of affordable housing units. Funding focused on the construction of affordable housing units was provided to the local chapter of Habitat for Humanity and PCRC. And since that time, PCRC has been working with the province of Manitoba and the federal government to leverage those funds to build as many units as possible for our community. And one barrier that PCRC has identified with respect to leveraging the provided funding in the beginning of the building of these units was the available land. It's basically land that it comes down to. So in 2020, City Council asked City Administration to identify city-owned surplus property that could be potentially used for the future affordable housing projects. And two lots came to mind. Those on 10th Street Northeast were identified as potential locations for future affordable housing projects, as shown on the sketch below. And these lots are currently are zoned R1, and they have no structures on them, and they're not serviced with water and sewer. And the two lots have a combined assessed value of $67,000. So if council permits the sale of this land, it's PCRC's intention to have the property rezoned to allow for multifamily residential construction. And at the direction of City Council, administration developed a land sale and development agreement for these two surplus lots. And the land sale and land development agreements outline the key principles of this land sale, which include: the land will be sold for $1 to PCRC. The legal cost for that sale will be paid by PCRC. The land must be used for the construction of affordable housing units. Construction must occur within a given timeline, or the land will be returned back to the City of Portage la Prairie. The lots are being sold not serviced for water and sewer, and that cost is to service those lots will be paid by PCRC. And the building of affordable housing units will comply with, obviously, the terms of the funding agreement outlined by the province of Manitoba. So it's with this in mind that it is your committee's recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the land sale and development agreements for the city-owned lots legally described as 1-1-27884 and 2-1-27884, and authorize the mayor and the city manager to authorize signatories to those agreements.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item of new business is the MTS Centrex phone service agreement. This is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of housekeeping items to deal with. One is the phone services agreement, and the next up will be our alarm servicing. So, as you had mentioned, it is an agreement for us to sign a new agreement with Bell MTS, and so our existing Centrex agreement has expired. We have 23 Centrex lines at facilities not able to sign up with our IP-based phone system, and our current agreement is for $35.20 per line per month. Signing the new agreement will reduce our costs to $24.99 per line per month, and this is a savings over $10.21 per line per month, or about $234 monthly, which now equates to $2,817.96 annually. And these savings will pay for most of the new IP phone system being installed over the course of the 60-month agreement. So it is the recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the agreement with Bell MTS for 60 months beginning March 15th, 2022, and that signing authority for the contract be given to the city manager.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the alarm monitoring contract award. This is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds again, please.
Thank you once again. And this contract involves, as mentioned, the monitoring alarms and security systems at 22 city facilities for a 36-month period. It should be noted the alarm monitoring at the water pollution control facility was removed from this tender, as this contract is going to be transitioned to a private operator, so it was issued on a one-year separate contract. It was advertised in our normal places, and 6 companies were contacted directly, and 11 requested a copy of the tender, but 5 bids were received back. So there they are. The results of the evaluated companies are shown in the table below. You can see the breakdown of the point system. And AAA Alarm Systems Limited is the current contractor, and they have provided generally good service over the past 3 years. The individual facilities prepare budgets for alarm monitoring, and the tendered pricing of $17,141.40 net of GST is close to or lower than what we have budgeted for this purpose. So as a result of all that, it is an administrative recommendation, and I'd like to move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for the supply of alarm monitoring services for 36 months beginning April 1st, 2022 to AAA Alarm Systems at the tender price of $17,141.40 net of GST.
Moved by Counselor Buds and seconded by Counselor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the first reading of zoning amendment bylaw 22-8732, and this is for 250 Fifth Avenue Northeast, and this is City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Counselor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Of course, in front of you, Council is a rezoning application for the applicant Thomas Sawatsky. If you look back, you'll see that there is a Schedule A, which describes the location of the rezoning request, and also a sketch that outlines the area as well. So, of course, tonight it's a first reading to commence the zoning amendment process by rezoning the above listed property, and the applicant wishes to take it from an R1 to an R3. And by giving this bylaw 22-8732 a first reading. So as always, we have the opportunity to give the bylaw a first reading and to advertise it and follow the process, or to not give the bylaw the first reading. So the background, in short, is the property in question, which are lots 265, 266, Plan 29 in the parish of Portage la Prairie, is presently zoned R1. The applicant, Thomas Sawatsky, wishes to rezone this property to an R3 residential multifamily zone. The Portage la Prairie Development Plan states the following. You can read it there, and it does talk about the housing mix and affordability, the housing supply, and of course the infill development. There are situations or in cases where properties differ from the prevailing patterns of lot size, configure, and orientation, that it may not be possible to provide the same site standards and pattern of development in these infill projects as exist in the surrounding neighborhood. So that said, the application will be circulated to the province for their review and then comment after the first reading. As per Section 74(1) of the Planning Act, Council shall then indicate its intention to enact a zoning bylaw amendment by giving first reading and proceed with the public notices set out in Section 168. The first reading then will commence the process as defined in the Planning Act in considering this application. So it's an administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie give bylaw number 22-8732 first reading, and that public notice be provided as defined in Section 168 of the Planning Act.
Moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our new business. An item old business, the second and third reading of bylaw 22-8731. This is rescinding purchasing bylaw 14-3821, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds?
Thank you, Worship, and you're right. This approval here tonight is rescinding an existing bylaw. So we are passing a bylaw to rescind a bylaw, and we've already done that. First reading, because we replaced this bylaw with a new purchasing policy. So, without further ado, it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that bylaw 22-8731, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to rescind purchasing and spending authorities bylaw 14-8621 be given a second reading.
Moved by Counselor Buds and seconded by Counselor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And finally, that bylaw 22-8731 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Counselor Buds and seconded by Counselor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. So council is adjourned at 6:14 PM, and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:14 PM. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Just management has been working diligently at getting through policy updates, and so you see that regularly on council reports. And this time for our next council meeting and for council's discussion here tonight is to update our finance policy, collection of utility accounts. And you can see that there's some changes that are being recommended. And it basically incorporates changes from gallons to cubic meters done in 2019, post-conversion of our Neptune water meters. Billing dates and right of offset to property taxes updated to reflect current practices, applicable penalties to also reflect current practices, and basically amended letter for overdue utility accounts. So just great job on housekeeping and keeping policies up to date. So that will be coming forth for approval at our next council meeting. Any questions on that item? Okay, is it all right if I just go to my next item, Your Worship?
Go right ahead. Councillor
Ready?
Buds.
So we have, as we know, and many of you know, we are having a municipal election. And so basically we're going to, review approving the conduction of that election together with the school board, which has been done for many, many years. And so you can see that the expense breakdown is outlined there. So senior election officials and assistants, approximately $20,900, $2,750 for advertising. We got some ballots, etc. So we do expect that the cost to be about $29,000, and the school division has agreed to 50-50 cost share this again. And so you can see that our portion would be about $14,500. And again, this is something that we've done for many years with the school division. So I will be supporting the recommendation to do that once again. So is there any questions on that particular item? And that does conclude my committee report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. And Community Service Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Draycott again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for the Waterworks Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing formal from the committee this evening. I just wanted to make note that at 12:01 tonight, our mandates for COVID restrictions end. And I just personally wanted to thank all the citizens of Portage la Prairie who stepped up and did what was asked of them when it came to following the directions from public health in wearing masks and getting vaccinated. And I think that that's what's brought us to this point. So well done, Portage la Prairie, and hope we continue in this trend. Thank you.
Good point. Having no further business, committee is adjourned at 6:18 PM. Thank you for coming out, everybody.